Hello, this is Ms. DB. In this video we are going to do two kinds of factoring. First we're going to review factoring the greatest common factor, and then we're going to factor like trinomials, quadratic expressions like x squared plus 13x plus 12, and we'll be focusing today just when there's no number in front of the x squared, so in other words a is equal to 1. Alright, so the first part is factoring by using the greatest common factor. That means you're going to figure out what is the biggest factor that is in both terms or all three terms or all of the terms, and then you're going to factor out, which is just another way of saying divide each term by that. So the first step is to find the greatest common factor. So greatest common factor is two numbers multiplied together equals the product. So like for 4, we can say that the factors of 4 are 4 times 1 or 2 times 2. Those are all factors of 4. And for x squared, the factors of x squared is x times x, because x times x equals x squared. So these are the factors of 4x squared. The factors of 3x, well, there's not very many. It's 3 times 1 and x. So now we're looking for the common factors. The common factor is the numbers or variables that appear in both of them. There are no numbers that appear in both of them. 4, 1, 2, 2, 3. I mean, 1 does, but we don't use 1 as a factor because 1 is a factor of every number. But there is an x in both. So the greatest common factor of these two terms is x. So what you do is you put the x in front, and then you put your parentheses, and then you figure out what is this first term if I factor out an x. Factor out an x is the same as divide by x. So we have 4x squared divided by x. You have to write what that is here in the first part of the parentheses. 4x squared is the same as 4 times x times x. X squared means x times x. And we're dividing or factoring out an x, so one of the x's cancels, and you're left with 4x. Then there's a minus sign here, so we put the minus sign in the parentheses, and now we have 3x, and divided by our common factor of x, you can see that the x's will cancel out and we'll be left with 3. This is your answer. Not just x, not just 4x minus 3, the whole thing. X times 4x minus 3. So you write the greatest common factor in front, and then you put parentheses, and then you put what would go inside the parentheses. This is the opposite of the distributive property. You can use the distributive property to check your answer. So you would take x times 4x, that's 4x squared, so that works. And then you would take x times negative 3, and that's minus 3x, so that works. So you check it with the distributive property. This example, B, there's more things that will be a greatest common factor because there's more parts that are common in each. So again, 10y cubed, that's the factors are 10 times 1, 2 times 5, and y times y times y. That's the times there. The factors of 20y squared, well, there's more than one factor. We could do 2 times 10, we could do 4 times 5, and the y part is y times y. And we could also do 1 times 10 here. I forgot that one. And then the last one is 5y. That one's, we don't even have to write anything. It's 5 and it's y. Then you look for your common factors. Well, there's a y in each one. It has to appear in each one in order to be a common factor. And what number appears in both? Is there any numbers? There's a 5 here, and a 5 here. So the greatest common factor is 5y. So again, you put the 5y in front of the parentheses. Then you figure out what goes inside the parentheses. You take each term in order, and you divide it by the greatest common factor. So 10y cubed divided by 5y. Well, y times y times y divided by y, 1y will cancel. The 5 divides into the 10 2 times, so we would have 2y squared. So you could write this out better. 10y cubed is the same as 5 times 2 times y times y times y. And on the bottom, the denominator, we had 5y. So 1y cancels, 5 cancels, 2 times y is 2y squared. So that's the first term in your parentheses. Now we figure out the second one. 20y squared divided by the greatest common factor of 5y. And that is 4y, because 20 divided by 5 is 4. Y squared divided by y is just 1y. And then the last one, this is very important, the last term was 5y, and your greatest common factor is 5y. This is not 0. This is 1. So you put a 1 here. 5y divided by 5y is 1. And then you can check with the distributive property and make sure you get the right thing. If you forgot the 1, when you check it with the distributive property, you would not get your last term, and you would know there was a mistake. So the great thing about factoring is that you can always check your work by multiplying and find out if you did or did not get the correct answer. Let's look at number 4. Number 4, the first step again is to find the greatest common factor. So our factors, or our terms, are 4x to the third and 10x squared and 2x. So 4x to the third, the factors are 1 and 4, or 2 and 2, and x times x times x. How about 10x squared? The factors are 1 times 10, or 2 times 5, and x times x. How about 2x? Well, that one's easy, 2 and x. Now you look through and you find numbers and variables that are common. There's an x in every one of them. You can only circle 1x because this last term only has 1x. You can't go over the minimum. And does everyone have a 2? This one has a 2, this one has a 2, this one has a 2. So your greatest common factor, which you don't need to write down like I'm doing, but you can, is 2x. What do you do with that greatest common factor? You put it in front, and then you put a set of parentheses. Now, inside the parentheses, we have to take each term in order and divide it by the greatest common factor. 4x cubed divided by 2x. You can write this out if you need help dividing this. That's 4 is the same as 2 times 2. X cubed is the same as x times x times x. We're dividing by 2x. Cancel any common factors. 2 is common, that cancels, x is canceled. So we're left with a 2 and an x times x. X times x is equal to x squared. I've said it before, it'll always be true. X times x equals x squared. Okay, we're done with the first term. Next term, 10x squared. We're going to divide that by 2x. You can rewrite it if it helps you factor this. We have 2 times 5 times x divided by 2 times x. Cross out, cancel any common factors in the numerator to the denominator. 2's cancel, x's cancel. It looks like I just drew more lines on the x. X's cancel. 5 times x is left. There's a plus sign here, so that will go here. And we're done with the middle term. Last term, minus 2x. Minus 2x. And we're dividing by 2x. You know what, we can just put the minus here and ignore it for now. 2x divided by 2x equals 1. Does not equal 0. You put a 1 here. You close your parentheses. You check with the distributive property. Let's just check in our head. I'm going to make this. Okay, so 2x times 2x squared. That would be 2 times 2 is 4. X times x squared is x cubed. So we do get 4x cubed. Then we take 2x times 5x. 2 times 5 is 10. X times x is x squared. That works. And then we would take 2x times negative 1, which would be negative 2x or minus 2x, and that works. So then we know that we have the correct factorization. All right, next we are going to, this is a review. This is, you've already done a worksheet on this. You're just going to practice multiplying two binomials together to remind yourself of the process, because then we are going to undo FOIL by factoring. So remember, to multiply, one way is to what we call FOIL. You would take x times x, the first times the first, and that's x squared. And then you take the outer, x times negative 1, would be negative 1x. And then you multiply the two inner, would be minus 9x. And then you multiply the last times last, negative 9 times negative 1 would be be a plus 9. And then you add your like terms, and you get a trinomial. A trinomial has 3 terms. This is also called a quadratic because it has a squared term as the first term. So both of those can be used. Once you have a quadratic or a trinomial, you can factor it and get back to what were the product of these binomials that would equal this. That's what we're going to be working on now. There's different ways to do this. We're going to look at a couple different ways. The first method is you look at, if there's no number in front of the x squared term, which is what this worksheet is all going to be, is no number in front of the x squared term. There's really a 1 there, but we kind of ignore that because 1 times anything is just the number itself. So we really are going to focus on the last number, and in this case it's a 9. You want the factors of 9 that will add up to the middle term. So we're going to write the factors of 9. Let's see, 3 times 3 is 9, but if you add 3 plus 3, you get 6, so that doesn't equal negative 10. What about negative 3 times negative 3? If you add those together, you get negative 6. So at least it's negative, but it's not negative 10. 9 times 1 is 9, but if you add those together, 9 plus 1 is 10. We're getting close, but we need negative 9 times negative 1 to get negative 10. This is the key right here. Now I know what to use when I factor x squared minus 10x plus 9. So what we're going to use is we write our 2 sets of parentheses because we know it's going to look like this, our answer. You put an x in front of each of them, and you use these numbers that you found worked inside the parentheses. So x minus 9 because we use negative 9, and x minus 1 because we use negative 1. And then we check with FOIL to make sure we factored this correctly. Now we just FOILed this right here. I already know that it's going to be the right answer because I'm checking it with, the problem. So this is how you factor a trinomial. It's the opposite of multiplying. It's the opposite of FOIL. There's lots of examples here. You can look at your worksheet and see examples when they're both plus. You can see examples when one of them is a minus sign, the middle term, and when the last term is negative, and when both are negative. So look through those examples to help you match these to the correct factors. You can FOIL this side to find the correct, but it would be a good idea for you to practice factoring and try to find the right one. Notice that all of these have minus, or have a 10 for the C term. The general form of a quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c, and in this worksheet we're looking at when the first term is 1. A is 1, the coefficient of the first term. So you're going to be doing all of these problems using the examples and the methods that we have shown here. And these are all 1x squared, so we just wrote x squared for all of them. There might be a couple that you find that cannot be factored. I haven't checked every one of them yet, but you might find that. I'll just do a random one. I'll do number 17. So the process again, if there was a number in front of the x squared, we'd be multiplying that times the last term, a times c, but there isn't, so we just have 1 times 30, or 30. So I'm going to look at the factors of 30 that will add up to be the middle term. So we want the factors of the last term. That means what times what equals that number. And we want to know the add-ins that will sum to the middle term. So for that would be plus times plus. This would be multiplication. All right, so the factors of 30. Well, 30 times 1, but if you add 30 plus 1, you get 31. Now, after you do a couple of these, and you've done this before, you've done this in algebra class, you will start to say, well, it doesn't make any sense to check all the factors if I know that there's no way that they could equal negative 11 when I add them. Like, I wouldn't really check negative 30 times negative 1 because I know that's going to be negative 31, which is nowhere close to negative 11. But you can get a piece of scratch paper out, or feel free to do it on here, and you can check every single factor if you want. So there's 3 times 10. which is 13. That's not going to work. And negative 3 times negative 10 is not going to work because that would be negative 13. And so on. You might have already figured out that it should be 5 times 6, but that would give me a positive 11, and I need a negative 11. So negative 5 times negative 6 is the key, because that equals a negative 11. So these are our factors. So once you figure out what the factors are that will work, you put 2 sets of parentheses, like this. You put x in front of each of them if x is the variable used. If it's some other variable, then don't use x, use whatever the variable is. And then you put your factors. So this would be minus 5, minus 6. Next step is to check. I'm going to check with FOIL. You could check with the table method or the vertical multiplication if you prefer. So first times first is x squared. That works. Then I would have x times negative 6, that's negative 6x. Then I would have negative 5 times x, that's negative 5x. And then I would have last times last is negative 5 times negative 6 would be a positive 30. All I have left is to add my middle two like terms together. Double check that this matches this. X squared minus 11x plus 30, it does. So then we know this is the solution. This right here is the solution, not the checking. So I see that I did 2 that had a negative in the middle. Let's do one that has a negative at the end. How about number 21? All right, in 21, I need the factors of negative 44 that add up to negative 7. 44 is 4 times 11. One of them needs to be negative because it's negative 44. If I add negative 4 plus 11, it's a positive 7. Close. Let's put the negative on the 11. And that is negative 7. So pretty quickly I found the right factors in this case. So again, 2 sets of parentheses. The variable is x, so you put x in the front of each, and then use these factors. It's plus 4 because this is a positive 4, so you add the plus in there. If it's a negative factor, then you put a minus. Then you check with FOIL. And once you check, if you're sure it's right, then you leave your answer as it is. If you check it and it doesn't work, erase it, delete it, and try again. Because if you check it and it didn't work, you're going to get it wrong. It's not the right factors. All right, so practice this. Don't use an online calculator to factor for you. You need to know how to do this. We're going to be factoring a lot as we continue through this class, and into all your future math classes, you need to know how to do this as well. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.